Now, the Executive Order 10, signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari in May 2020, is the latest source of controversy in Nigeria's political space. The Executive Order 10 gives financial autonomy to the Legislature and the Judiciary at the state level, but state governors are opposed to the new legislation from the President. Judiciary workers have been on strike since the 6th of April, protesting the non-implementation of the financial autonomy of the Judiciary, as well as lack of independence of the Judiciary from interference by the Executive. JUSUN's ongoing strike has paralyzed activities in courts across the country, but the Nigeria Governors Forum says autonomy is not entirely about money, but putting necessary measures to strengthen the other two arms of government at the state level. Lawyer and public affairs analyst Fred Nzako joins me now for more on this. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good to be here.
Right. I'm certain that you have been following developments with regards to this issue of Executive Order 10 to follow or not to follow it. The governors had raised objections to it when the president even came up with it last year, May 2020. And now it is rearing up its head again. So much so, the Attorney General of the Federation has said there is no going back and was ready to push through with the executive order. Now, this is stemming from the fact that the Judiciary, JUSUN, is supposed to have some level of autonomy. And because of the strike they have embarked on, this is coming up again. And this issue of executive order came up, and the governors are saying that they were not carried along before the president came up with it. That is the grounds, one of the grounds they have with it. And so the issue of whether the executive order supersedes the provision of the Constitution also is coming up. Let's get your feel of all of these issues stirring up now.
I think it's a reflection of the upside-down federalism that we practice, upside down, in the sense that what we have in Nigeria today is not federal system. What we have is a quasi-federal system, a pseudo-federal system that is more military in nature, more unitary than federal. I say that advisedly because we have a Federal Republic of Nigeria. We are expected to operate a federal system, a federal structure, whereby the 36 states become the federating units. But we all know that even the 36 states, a lot of them cannot even stand on their own without allocation from the center. And of course, that is the lopsidedness we are talking about, because the federal government is in charge of most of the things that bring in money to the federation account, especially the source of which is petroleum resources and the rest of them. Now, when money now comes from federation account to various states, don't forget that we have three arms of government: executive, legislature, judiciary. They are supposed to be autonomous, independent, but still working in concert, in tandem with one another to ensure that government runs seamlessly without challenges. But what we see today is that the legislature and the judiciary are challenges of interference from the executive, especially with respect to funding. That is the whole essence of federal government going ahead with this executive order. Of course, the executive order itself is a surplusage. In the first instance, you didn't need it for state government to do what is right and what is already enshrined in the Constitution, especially with the amendment of the Constitution, the first alteration of 2018, which has also given autonomy, financial autonomy, to the three arms of government, especially to the legislature and the executive, and the judiciary. Today, the problem is with the judiciary, because they are saying that even with that autonomy granted, that the governors at the various states do not respect the provisions of that law.
Consistent breach.
Consistent breach. It is already being recognized at the federal level. That is why you don't have challenges at the federal level between the executive and legislature, and the judiciary. But at state level, some states, not all, some states have already started implementing that, but majority of the states are still in breach. And it is obviously affecting and hampering the smooth process of running of the judicial system. And that's why JUSUN, the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, has gone on strike. Now, there is an executive order. That executive order is to the effect to give teeth, and administrative teeth, to the law, which has given financial autonomy to the judicial system. So it makes it double.
Right.
The governors are now latching in on the fact that, whoa, this is a federal system. The federal government is not supposed to tell us what to do. They are supposed to, I mean, we are almost independent in our administration. But what has happened is that because of the lack of respect for the provision of the law, or the constitution as it is, that is what has pushed the federal government to now add that executive order as a surplusage. In case you people don't read the constitution, in case people claim that you don't know that this is what is provided for in our laws, this is an executive order, and the government are now hanging on that and saying, no, we are autonomous, we are independent in our administration of the states, away from the federal government. But don't forget that large chunk of the funds that go to the states come from the federal level, although it is not from the federal government, but from the federation account. And then the federation account is managed and controlled by the federal government. So that is the confusion in our system. That is the confused federalism that we practice in Nigeria. And that is why everything is now, according to, we say in law, according to the length of the foot of the chancellor. The governors will act the way they want, the president will act the way he wants. As a matter of fact, if you look at this stricto sensu, if you look at it strictly on the principle of federalism, the federal government is not supposed to issue orders to the state, administrative orders. But then, the money that is being managed by the state, large chunk of it, up to 70–80%, comes from the federal center, comes from the central post of the federation account. Yeah. So, the governors are expected to respect the provisions of the law, the autonomy, and grant real autonomy to the judiciary and the legislature, so that the three arms of government will operate with each strength, with each one operating with each strength and having oversight function on the other one.
They seem to be returning to that position now, because they have been speaking about the financial autonomy law that they believe supersede any other thing, any other provisions. But then the question on the lips of some persons is, what really are these governors afraid of that they had been in consistent breach?
Oh, the governors are afraid of losing funds. It is the same fear that they have that has moved them towards confiscating, in quote, the local government funds. Don't forget that as a third tier of government, the local government system draws funds from federation account that is supposed to go to them directly. But there is this, under Section 7, there is this nebulous provision of state and local government joint account, in which case most of the funds, when they come, they go into the state joint account. It is from that state joint account that they now give out funds to local government. There is no local government in Nigeria that earns its money from federation account that gets it fully. Most times, because of that state local government joint account, the governors now tinker with the funds of the local government. And that is what has kept the local government in comatose state, unable to discharge its responsibilities at the government that is closest to the people. It is that same interference that we are seeing in this issue of the judicial system. And it is affecting the courts. There is no basis why, if we operate the way we should operate, why the governor will be the ones to buy cars and other facilities of work for the judiciary. There's no reason why the governor has to give out cars to the judges. There's no basis. Give out cars to the magistrates. And then by the time the governor does that, it becomes a contact point of influence. It becomes a contact point of overriding influence and twisting, in some cases, of the judiciary. So it has become a tool in the hands of the government, of the governors, to manipulate and interfere with the judiciary through release of funds. And that is why what JUSUN is doing is right. Even though we won't support a situation where the courts are closed down because it is affecting the dispensation of justice, but when the governors don't want to listen, when they don't want to do what is right, If the strike is the only thing that they want to hear, they want to know, then in that case, the people can be justified in their actions. So Nigerians should go ahead and ask the governors to do what is right. I don't know why the governors in their governors forum will not sit themselves down, review under their peer review mechanism, and look at the issues that will constructively develop the country rather than issues that will be more or less on the side of aggrandizement.
Right. Now, some labor leaders say that the National Assembly is not doing enough to uphold the law they created with regards to this issue. And they're asking, why can the lawmakers and even the judiciary harness the powers they have to checkmate the executive?
The executive. Well, the judiciary has limited power to checkmate the executive. Limited in the sense that the only way the executive can be checkmated is through the legislature. That's the only way. Because it is legislature that represents the people. It is legislature that has that responsibility and has that authority of impeachment. Now, any other checkmate will be by way of moral suasion, by way of talking to the people, let's try to see and do what is right. But in terms of handing down punishment, it is only by way of impeachment. Which governor has ever been impeached in Nigeria, apart from the experience we had in the 70s, when Buhari Musa was impeached? There's no other one. And that was not because of what he did, but because of undue political politicking in Kaduna State then. No other governor has ever been impeached. And a matter of fact, as we speak, even the legislature, that is the state assemblies that are supposed to be the major check and balance on the executive, they are more or less an extension of the executive, because the governors, using the same revenue approach, the same financial inducement, the same financial stifling, will want to pocket the legislature in each state, and such that the members of the Houses of Assembly more or less don't have strength to checkmate the governors. And it is that lack of strength that has affected the autonomy of the local government system, because the law has made it that the local government administration is under the state government system. Right. In which case, the laws that will be used to run the local government system are the laws made by the state houses of assembly, apart from the bylaws made by the local government for their own administrative convenience. But the major laws that run the state local government system are the laws by the state houses of assembly. Now, when autonomy for the local government system was now an issue, the state governors themselves frustrated it. When you try to demerge local government funding from that of the state, to amend that section 7 of the Constitution, which provided for the state local government joint account, the state governors themselves frustrated it by ensuring that the two-third majority required of all the state houses of assembly in Nigeria was not met. Yeah. And then why would that not be met? Because the state houses of assembly are more or less being manipulated, being twisted, being influenced adversely by the governors. The
National Assembly is saying that they will be meeting with the governors, I think today, to address this issue so that every gray areas will be, whatever concerns they have would be addressed, and perhaps, and also appealing to JUSUN to call off their strike. I wonder where you see this conversation leading. Do you think that at the end of the day would achieve it would achieve its purpose, and then the workers, those on strike, will return to work, and the autonomy we are seeking would come to light?
Well, if the governors are sincere, if the governors talk to themselves, if they want to respect the law and obey the law that is put in place towards the autonomy of the judiciary, the meeting will be meaningful. Because the best the National Assembly can do is to impress it on the governors and encourage them, persuade them to respect this law and grant the autonomy, or rather implement the autonomy, financial autonomy that has already been granted. Because what it means is that while the governors are running up and down now, is that there's a threat by the federal government to withhold the sums going to the judiciary from the federation account that's supposed to go to the states. Yes. And if that is withdrawn at source, then the governors will have no other option than to go to court. And at this point, at this juncture, I want to encourage the federal government to do so. Withhold this fund, send it directly to the judicial system of to the judiciary of every state, headed by the chief judge of each state. There's the State Judicial Service Commission, headed by usually the chief judge of the state. The same way National Judicial Service Commission and Federal Judicial Service Commission headed by the chief justice of Nigeria. At the federal level, there is already an autonomy, and it is working well. So why wouldn't there be autonomy at the state level? Because we want the governors to think, put on their thinking cap. They don't have to have so much money at their possession, because when they have so much money, that's when you begin to talk about the looting, misappropriation, and stealing of the public fund. That to the extent that there's virtually all the governors today, by the time they come down, there will be problem of misappropriation, a problem of money laundering, there's problem of that. In order to ensure that so much money is not in the hands of the governors, let the money that's supposed to go to local government go to local government. Let the money that's supposed to go to judiciary go to judiciary. Let the money that go to legislature go to legislature. At the end of the day, the one that the executive is supposed to use will be maximally utilized. It will help our democracy, and not one man sitting down and then aggregating the whole funds and deciding how to dispense them, even outside the gambit and the provisions of the law. So I want to encourage National Assembly to speak to the governors. I want to encourage the federal government to withhold the funding to the local government and to the judicial system, and send the money directly to them. Even though, on one hand, we have another problem because of lack of amendment of the provision of the Constitution. And that is why we say that this our Constitution needs holistic touch, because it is not a people's Constitution.
Right.
The element of unitarism is so high in our Constitution, and the governors are latching in on that, utilizing the loophole in the Constitution, and then misleading the people and misappropriating the funds. And that is why there are no developments in the country. A governor is supposed to put on the thinking cap and ensure that there are many ways, ingenious ways of not only increasing the internally generated revenue of each state, but also ensuring that there is minimized wastages in the bureaucracy, so that you have enough funds to put on the capital expenditure, and that's the only way the country can grow. The country cannot grow by putting the whole money in one pot and one man dishing it out the way he wants, and then and bastardizing the whole thing. That is exactly what we are seeing today, and it's a very big challenge. But
are you confident that we'll get that result today when they meet?
Well, I am not confident that we'll get the result today, but I am hopeful that if continuously done, the rapprochement and the engagement has to continue. Even if they don't get the result today, they will continue to engage the governors and also encourage the executive at the federal level to begin to tinker with the release of funds, so that the governors themselves will be forced to go to court. By the time they go to Supreme Court against the federal government, Supreme Court will now point to them the provisions of the law.
Right. But then some have really wondered that would a financial autonomy in itself, is it enough to really orchestrate the independence of the judiciary?
I think let's start from there. Because you cannot run government without funds. One other thing that will need to be done is the process of appointment of the judges. These are issues that need to be touched. The process of interference of the governors in the judicial system with respect to appointment, promotion, and the rest of them. These are issues that need to be touched, even though through the NJC, to a large extent, that has been taken care of. Financial autonomy for judiciary will, to a very large extent, embolden the judiciary to be able to dispense justice without fear or favor. But what we see is that in most cases, when you take government to court, in some cases, the judiciary will not be bold enough to give judgment that will be against government. And even when they give such judgment, the implementation becomes an issue. Harvesting the fruit of that judgment becomes an issue. But once there is this autonomy, to a large extent, I mean, no judge will be afraid of any backlash. He will look at the law, dispense justice the way it should be, And then that is where our democracy will begin to take shape on a better pedestal. Because what we practice today is not the true democracy that we should be practicing.
We did also lead to, because we often say that judiciary is the last hope of the common man. And I remember asking a guest yesterday, and he goes that the judiciary is supposed to be the last hope of the common man in Nigeria, but that is not the case with all of this that we are seeing.
Well, it's supposed to be, but we have seen that it is not. We have seen from experience that it is not the last hope of the common man. Sometimes it's the last hope of the rich man. The common man is often not taken into consideration, taken care of, except when you begin to see activism on the bench. When you begin to see activism on the bench, and what will help the activism on the bench is this autonomy that we're talking about. All right? Like I said, I gave an example earlier. There's no basis why the executive will be the one to provide housing, accommodation to the judges, provide them with cars, provide them with computers in the courts and the rest of them. And when they do that with fanfare, as if they're doing them a favor. They're not doing them any favor. The very moment the three arms of government come together and prepare the budget, from the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, prepare the budget, presented to the House, and it is approved, then each one of these arms of government should now draw its fund from the consolidated revenue account of the state, and not for the governor to decide this one will go to the judiciary, this one will go to the legislature, and sometimes a large chunk of what was budgeted does not get to them. And even for it to get to them, they have to do a lot of undercurrent with the executive arm. The Commissioner of Finance will have his input. The Accountant General will have his input, and the rest of them. By the time some of these inputs are put in place, there are a lot of water will pass under the bridge. These are some of the challenges that we have. By the time this autonomy is granted, I want to believe that it will enhance checks and balance. It will enhance the freedom of the judiciary to dispense justice. It will also enhance their provision of the facilities that they require. Some courts sit under mango trees in some states in this country.
Really?
Some courts, some magistrate and some magistrate courts and some lower courts sit under ramshackle buildings. Why? Because they don't have enough fund to put up the structures. They're waiting for the state government to do that, whereas they are supposed to do that. So that the same way the governor will be running the executive arm, the chief judge of the state will be running the judicial arm. And of course, there are departments in the judiciary, finance, administration, and the rest of them, that will ensure that the things are done right. But where is the money? And that is what JUSUN is asking for.
If this condition has been on, especially when you spoke about that some courts are sitting under mango trees,
yes.
If that has been the situation, why wait till this time to begin to push? Because we know that the former Nigeria Bar Association president, that's Olisa Agbakoba, had 2 judgments some time ago. That was not adhered to, so to speak. But why are we not seeing that push? Why did we have to wait till this point in time?
Well, something has to start sometime, somehow, someday. It was as a result of this breach. It's already provided in our 1999 Constitution.
Yes.
Not handled. Then the alteration of the Constitution 2018 also touched it again.
Yes.
The governors are still observing it in breach. Executive order now came. This is more or less a third measure to ensure that there is autonomy. Yet, the governors are kicking against it. Until the money is being withheld from federation account and sent directly to the arms of government that are supposed to receive them, maybe that is when the governors will understand that there is need for them to respect the law. I expect them to do so at the level of Nigerian Governors Forum.
Yes.
I expect them sit themselves down and then look at the issues with all seriousness that they deserve. If they fail to do that, then there are no other options than to ensure that the monies are sent directly to the various arms. That way, the governors are threatening that they will go to court. We went to see them in court.
All right. We'll leave the conversation here now. Lawyer and public affairs analyst Fred Nzako, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Many thanks.